Well, 24 hours to the big day, and we decide to go full blast just like the nation has already. It's the election day, and of course, right on the eve of the election, but a couple of other issues have been happening. We have the peace accord as well as so many other stories making the rounds. Preparations for the big one, which is the presidential and the National Assembly elections. How ready are we, the umpire, the participants, and of course, the watchers? Welcome. I'm Sulaiman, our lady.
Well, this is how we decided to do Nigeria 2015 today on your darling Sunrise Daily. Welcome, I'm Malpe Ogun.
Oh, it is pretty much interesting to see that Nigeria is now transiting to another phase in our democratic pursuit. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us. I am Gimba Umar.
Well, we also have Benga who will be joining us, telling us because he's observed a couple of elections within the continent. He should be telling us his experiences, and we'll see how we can relate that to what will be happening tomorrow. Let's start talking about the hours. We're counting down to the very big day. We all started by looking at a couple of months, and now just a couple of hours, the big day will be here. It is upon us, and what we have seen so far from the big players, don't forget we have more than two presidential candidates, but when we said the big players, they have dominated the news in recent times, and of course the peace pact, the need for us to talk about peaceful elections, credible elections, and elections that will be acceptable by all Nigerians is very key here. And we did see that again yesterday. You would want to call it the renewed call for peace by the main challengers in this particular election. But for Nigerians, they say, whether you like it or not, we want peaceful elections, and peaceful elections we must have.
And everybody believes that is how it should go, Sulaiman. They have been at this for quite a while now. Recall that initially when the dates were fixed for February 14, it was seen that tensions were high. But right now it was seen that, I think a week to that election date when it was shifted, people said it was like as if they poured cold water on a fire and everything just went off. It seems like 6 weeks will never come. But from what we've seen now, INEC chairman says it was a blessing in disguise. Let's just say it was a blessing because they say it's giving them time to prepare, and before you know it, we're 24 hours to D-Day. So much has gone on in the 6 weeks, in the 6-week law that was provided by that postponement. So you had more people getting to pick up their permanent registration cards, the permanent voter cards, and then you also had INEC getting itself prepared in many areas, also trying to show how the new innovations, or let's say the new interventions, new modifications to the elections are going to work, talking about the card readers. We've seen the controversy that has also been causing, as it were, and then I think that we're also past that now. It's 24 hours to D-Day. A lot of people will be wondering, what does tomorrow hold? It was extremely reassuring to also see the peace pact that was renewed among the main actors. This was also coinciding with when the NHRC was saying that the first one it was seen has been breached. So I think it was extremely appropriate that that particular peace accord was signed again by the major actors, at least to send a strong message to their supporters to say, please keep the peace regardless of whatever provocation, and also ensure that while you're at it, you're also patient, because whether or not we like it, I'm afraid to say this, but there will be hiccups, and I think that it's going to be the true test of how ready we are for this democracy.
Well, for Gimba, you've been on the road, chasing what we want to call the roadmap to the big moment. Yourself and Benga actually have been following all of that trend, and I'm quite sure, because what Malcolm has reminded us here about what NHRC did say is very key here. First, there was a pact, and it was broken, and we did see a lot of that from political parties, followers, in different states across the country. It's been broken, it's been breached, and they said, well, the need for us to renew it is very, very key here, just as we get close to the big day.
I'll tell you what, Sulai, the stakes are indeed high. This is the highest we've seen it in the many years that we've conducted elections. We've come to a situation where an accord has been broken. It's been redone again by President Goodluck Jonathan and General Muhammadu Buhari running for the APC. One thing that actually struck my attention was the little bit of tension, if you call it body language, when they were asked to hug each other. Well, you felt that, yes, I saw that, and I think it's actually a talking point for a lot of people too, and industry watchers who are looking at these elections, and beyond Nigeria, the election observers. What does this say about our preparedness, our willingness to accept the results of the elections? It's going to be a key factor here, what we're looking at. And the piece called by Buhari and Goodluck Jonathan, for one, will do two things, one of which is it will help to curtail any violence by the supporters on the one hand. On the second hand, it gives an assurance that yes, we can actually go into these elections knowing fully well that everything is going to turn out well at the end, despite that we're having so much military presence on the streets, and the court says you cannot do that, but that is being done at the moment, and so we wanted to take a look at how the events will unfold in the coming hours from now and then. What we've seen also, skirmishes of violence here and there in Owo, for example. 4 banks were raided, armed robbers killing people there, but they got accosted at some point too by the government forces at some point. We're also looking at in Oshodi here in Lagos, a flashpoint also, some records of violence, which we'll also be looking at in the course of the program this morning. But one thing we can always take home is that Nigerians are ready for these elections, and the security agents are also ready. We do not know if the courts will not take lightly to this, because they said that you cannot have the military presence on the street because we have not declared a state of war. Nigeria is not at war, so you cannot have the military. You can have the police, but not the military.
Well, Oliver, I think that is subject to interpretation again. If you go to the courts, perhaps that for some great legal minds, they say, well, that judgment would amount to not having the military within the precinct of where the elections are taking place, but you can have them on the streets. Just like what happened in Oshodi, you just reminded us ago, Oshodi, if not for the presence of the military yesterday, it would have snowballed into something else. So it was chaotic movements yesterday and the early hours of yesterday morning on the Oshodi axis here in Lagos, southwest of Nigeria. But we did gather that it was pretty well taken care of by the security agencies. And of course, awful moment, awful story yesterday when the story broke. It actually touched a lot of minds here, talking about Owo and the banks, not one, not two. So the banks yesterday, and we saw the casualty figure, gory images from there. But again, we must give it to the Nigerian security agencies for swinging into action to nipping that particular one in the bud. But these are some of the issues we'll be talking about with so many great security minds, and looking at how elections have been held in times past in the country, and also see how we can relate that with the security situation in the country, how much of gains the Nigerian army especially has garnered in the northeast of the country, as well as the call for the people on election day to be vigilant. I recall vigilance is the key word there. But now as we move towards elections, there's another thing that you would need security, and you also need the people in terms of vigilance, and that has to do with election materials. They call it sensitive election materials because they are indeed sensitive.
Well, Sulaiman, when he did say that we could take away two things, he said we could take away the fact that the military, the security agencies are ready and that the people are ready. The question will be, how ready is the umpire? Well, yesterday we did hear that they have been deploying election materials before now, the non-sensitive materials, even before the elections were postponed. But now you now have 24 hours to do the 48 hours to do the sensitive materials were already being deployed to do the various areas. Remember also that this is also one area that the security agencies help out as well. I think that our correspondents were out yesterday to see what was happening in the different INEC offices. I think that we'll be viewing that much later in the program as to see what exactly transpired. But I think that people do get a little jittery when they hear that sensitive materials are in town.
What are the sensitive materials is the question. First thing is the card reader, basically, and other paperwork that you need to tamper before you do your
the ballot
papers. And the results sheets, and then how you get the what do you call it now, the ballot boxes to the collation centers. So those are the processes that we'll be looking at within the next 48 hours plus, and then we'll try to see how people will trying to get this process right.
Do you think we could be longer than this? Perhaps we should ask you have observed elections in other African countries. You've seen what exactly transpires. The hit that you felt in this particular election, do you also feel this way? Do you also feel that momentum when you go to other African countries as well?
Well, I think I share your relative doomsday prediction when you said that Linda said, the stakes are pretty much high, and I think that the tensions in the country is really high indeed. We look at an election that you and I can say this is one of the most expensive elections in the history of this country. You talk about the amount being spent on adverts. You talk about the campaigns. We've seen robust campaigns. But it's quite a pity that what we call the novelty of our democratic process in terms of the biometrics, the card reader, is being introduced in Nigeria for the first time. I saw that in Ghana. I saw that in Mali election. And in Ghana election, it was the beauty of the process because everything was peaceful. And this is meant to enhance our democratic process. But in Nigeria, we've seen a situation where it has been a subject of controversy for so long a time. And when we also look at the fact that the peace accord is being threatened with the violence in River State, Okrika violence, that is still fresh in our memory. And just few days to the election, we are saying what happened in Owo. And also the PDP has had cause to complain about what happened in Bauchi and some other areas in the north. So these hate speeches, this tension would go a long way to define our democratic process. Then we also look at the advancement of the social media, the impact, the traffic this is driving into our democratic process, in which it's also driving into the consciousness. You can say the level of participation of Nigerians, the voter. The facts are there that the number of PVCs collected, the number of eligible voters have surpassed that of 2011. So definitely the expectations are indeed high. And it will go a long way to say that this history is being made, because whatever happens, which party emerges, there's a lot of lessons to be learned in this transition process. But the fact is, how do we midwife this process? What the world is watching, the international observers is watching. What does it say when the Commonwealth observers come into the country, the EU observer come into the country, and they say they can't go to monitor election in the Northeast?
I think we'll come back and draw from that wealth of experience. Well, you've got your eyes on the continent when it comes to elections and a couple of other issues we're looking at, especially with the PVC and the card reader, which you did see when you were in Ghana. You tell us how the electorate welcomed that particular development in Ghana at that time. But talking about movement of sensitive materials, they have categorized them into two, the non-sensitive and sensitive materials, and you have been trying to break it down for us, spell it out, the card reader, the ballot papers, and of course the collation sheet, and even the result sheet. These are some of the things that INEC have termed sensitive materials. So we need to go to town, and what we gathered about all of this movement, we'll bring them to you now.